Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 166.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's Sheila Webster here, and I'm joined by Elise Seifert. Hi, Elise.
Hey, Sheila, what's on your mind today?
Well, I wanted to talk about the 7 wonders.
Awesome. So are we talking natural wonders, ancient wonders, man-made wonders?
Well, neither actually,
Okay.
but what are the ancient wonders of the world? Can you name one?
I can't name all of them. I don't remember all of them, but things that don't exist anymore, but that were spoken about in previous texts. So, for example, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Okay, and a natural wonder.
Niagara Falls.
Right. And a man-made wonder.
The Great Pyramids of Giza.
Or the CN Tower.
I don't think the CN Tower is one of the 7.
Okay. Well, anyways, that's very interesting, but not at all what I want to talk about.
Okay, what are we talking about then?
So these are the 7 wonders of the world: to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, to laugh, and to love.
Oh, nice. Those are lovely wonders.
So I would almost say they're the natural wonders, but organic wonders. What are we going to call these 7 wonders?
I think these are the keys to being present, really. The wonders of being present.
That really hit me when I first read it. I was like, yeah, whenever I'm trying to be present in something, I think about, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I, feel? So that's what I got out of this when I was listening to it. But I feel like we don't appreciate these natural wonders that we have.
Not at all, especially in our society today.
Yeah.
For example, when I go for a walk, I usually put on my headphones and I listen to an audiobook.
Yes.
So I'm definitely not super present. I'm not listening to the sounds of the birds or listening to the cars that are passing me by or anything. I'm kind of tuning it out.
Yeah.
So I know there are definitely examples in our society where it's so easy, especially with technology, to not be present because there's so much technology out there that allows you to kind of distract yourself from the presence.
Yeah. So that's really the hearing. We're not listening. And that actually scares me sometimes because I'm driving a lot. And so I'll see people walking with headphones or running.
Yeah.
And you're not hearing the sounds around you.
Yes. I always have one ear free.
Right.
Just so that I could hear if there's a cyclist passing me or cars or something. And because I usually walk with the baby.
Yes.
So in case he's crying, I got to hear him. But
yes.
It's always nice. It's a nice time, to carve out for yourself, to do something for yourself where you're listening to that book. So the one hand, you feel like you're doing something nice for yourself. On the other hand, you're thinking, I'm not really being present.
Yes. But I think you can probably do both. If you're going for the walk, before you turn on the book or whatever you're listening to,
take a minute to appreciate what's going on.
Take a minute. But even with your book going on, you can still see, you can still touch, right? I love watching the sunrise because I'm up that early and I'm working already, and the sun is coming up over the buildings, and just watching the day come to life. It's like a new day, a new dawn. What is the day going to bring?
There's always something about sunsets and sunrises that's just always so awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you've seen them. They're just incredible every single time.
Well, and the thing that amazes me is that even if it's the same sunrise, you're at the same location every day, it's different.
Yeah.
They're just a little thing, a little haze in the sky, or there's a cloud, or there's no clouds, or it's cold. And so there's that fog coming in, or whatever it is. It is awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like I'm part of a big picture.
That's true. It makes you kind of realize that there's so much more going on than just what you're going through in your day.
Exactly. And it kind of makes the things that you're stressed about or upset about or didn't go well, not that important as you thought it was.
No.
There's bigger picture, other things going on.
There are. And there are definitely times I can remember where I wasn't very present. I wasn't, seeing or hearing or touching. There's always times in my life where you're kind of thinking about the next step. Okay, what am I doing next? Or I'm ready to get over this phase. I'm ready to get over this. And one time I remember specifically recognizing it was when I was backpacking. So 10 years ago now, which is wild to think about, I went on a big backpacking trip for 5 months.
Yes.
And living out of your backpack is hard. It's hard.
I can't even imagine.
No, it's really hard. And you always feel gross because we were staying at hostels and we were getting our clothes cleaned at different hotels, and they're doing their best, but you just never feel clean and you never feel rested and you're just hopping from bed to bed. And even though you're doing the most incredible thing, you've seen the most amazing sights, eating delicious foods, I still remember points of that trip where I'd think, okay, I only have 3 more weeks left, or I only have 2 more. I'm halfway through. We're getting through this. And, it's hard. At that moment, I was like, what am I thinking? This is the most amazing experience of my life. I'm never going to have this opportunity again. I need to really take time to enjoy it. But sometimes it's hard. When you're on a 32-hour bus ride.
32-hour
You're like,
bus ride?
How can you be present in that moment?
I know sometimes you feel like you shouldn't be present in some of those.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, okay, just like go out of your body. You are somewhere else. But like, what an awesome experience.
An awesome experience.
Right? Like, even though it was 32 hours. Okay, so you don't have to be present all 32 hours. You can like go, get into a book or hopefully maybe get into a dream or something, right? Yeah. Those type of things. But like these wonders, the smells, the sounds, there's just so much going on around you. It's just unbelievable. And to see the different cultures too.
Oh, yeah.
36
I remember
hours.
being on a really long bus ride and someone brought like a chicken on.
A live chicken?
A live chicken.
Well,
yeah.
I guess a live chicken would be better than a raw chicken or a dead chicken.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. At least it was alive. But you think, wow, this wouldn't happen. I don't think in Canada, I don't think that would happen, but who knows?
But the chicken was on the bus for like 36 hours?
I don't think it was that long. I think it was more like a four-hour trip.
Still,
yeah, they were going somewhere with that chicken.
And it's just like, and it's a cage or something?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's an experience.
It is an experience. Yeah.
Wow.
But I do also find now with a baby, so I have a pretty young baby. He's just under 5 months now. I find I notice him being so present all the time.
So present.
And just so many little things that you're like, that's not really amazing, bud. But he's, just admiring the leg of the table. Or we went swimming and he was so into the water falling off of the water slide in the pool. Mm-hmm. And he just was trying to figure it out. And he's just so present. And you think, wow, this is so cool. Yeah. This is how we should live our life.
Yeah. Like living it through him. Yeah. You really appreciate these things going, wow, that is kind of cool. Or yeah, that's holding the table up, these legs, you know,
or he loves trees.
Loves trees.
And you're like, yeah, I guess trees are pretty amazing.
Yeah. Like even hearing them, like the trees, the breeze and the branches and whistling in the wind. Like I love that sound. Yeah. So hearing all that kind of stuff is really, it is really cool to see life through a baby. But I agree with you that it's really important. This makes me want to stay in the moment. Like I've been with people and we've been on great experiences. I'm in this amazing place and they're talking about what they're doing in the future 2 months from now. Oh, I'm going to be doing this and this and this. I'm like, wait, like we're here, like right here. That will probably never be again. Like appreciate this. Like I do really try and enjoy the moment. When I was younger, I definitely didn't. I was always kind of figuring out what's going on next or figuring out what I had to do next. Or I was kind of that type of personality that I always had to be organized and get going and like not even enjoying a show that I put together that took 12 months to put together because I was worried about what's next. Okay, how am I going to clean this up? How am I going to get this all put away? What am I going to time-wise, I've slowed down and started to enjoy the moment.
And do you find it makes things more enjoyable?
Oh, it makes it much more enjoyable because you get to just see things that you wouldn't normally look at.
Yeah.
Or feel or talk to, because one of the wonders is to love. And I feel like sometimes when I'm in a party, I don't give people the time, like I will talk to you. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm going to actually talk to you for 10 minutes and how is everything and what's going on in your world? And, have that experience. Enjoy that. You don't have to just be there for the reason that you're there. You can enjoy each other's time too.
Yeah. I think it's hard. Like you said, you're kind of a planner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a planner. Mm-hmm. And I'm always envious of those people who kind of feel, oh, it'll happen when it happens, or it'll all work out. I've never really been that way. I've always been like, I have to make it work out and I have to plan it because that's how it works. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to live my life more like that, where you're like, okay, it'll all work out. There's no sense in stressing over it right now. That's the future and I'll figure it out. But that's hard for me.
Oh, that's
something I'm working on.
Yeah, that's very hard for me. And, they're kind of right. It does kind of all work out.
It always does. I know.
It does seem to all come together. And also, I'm the one that, same as you, tends to take responsibility and do it all. And I feel like if I don't do that, if I just let it happen, it just kind of happens. Like, here, I'll tell you this story. So we were here. I was with Elise last week and my sister texts me saying, hey, I've got this party. I text someone about getting a charcuterie board and she's going to charge me $500 for this. Do you think we can do this cheaper? Because generally that is like my goal in life, to always do things like really cool things, but like do it cheap and do it fast. And, so she asked me and I was like, oh, 100%. I could do that for $200. Yeah. And she was like, you're hired, just as a joke. But I realized I wasn't going to be at this party that she needed me to organize it for.
Oh, shoot.
So then I was talking to her. And so I told her this. I was at yoga, actually. And so I told her this. And there were some other women at the class. And we were talking about how that's so expensive and how life is so expensive. And she was like, well, the one girl was like, hey, I've got a charcuterie board that's really big. You can borrow it. And she's like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, great. And then I told her that I couldn't really help her with it. And she was like, okay. So then the next day, she says to me, oh, I know someone else who just came home from a trade show with a whole bunch of cheese. I'm going to put this charcuterie board together for you. And it's just like, it just happened. She's like, I don't even need to do anything.
Without you having to stress about it.
Without me having to stress, without her having to stress, it just kind of happened.
But if you feel like you have to take it all on yourself, then you would have been stressing about it and you'd be figuring out a way to attend the party and get all this stuff.
Exactly. How can I attend the party, 200 kilometers away and get all this stuff? And it just all kind of happened because we're like, oh, don't worry. Like, it'll come together. It's no big deal.
Yeah. And it does. It really does.
Yeah. So it's the 7 wonders of the world: to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, to laugh, and to love.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of artistic wellness. One of our themes of the podcast is that art is so very important to wellness. Think about how seeing or hearing art or producing art can have such a beneficial impact on you. And today we speak with MP Mike Morrice of an initiative he's pursuing to help people in all communities get the benefit of art. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me back again, John.
Member of Parliament of Canada, Mike Morrice, is inspired by the great things people can accomplish when genuinely listening to each other. They look to find common ground and they prioritize future generations. Before being elected, Mike founded Sustainable Waterloo Region. He co-created Climate Action Waterloo Region and piloted Canada's first Green Economy Hub. He later founded Green Economy Canada to share his work across the country. Mike was the first Green Party of Canada candidate to be elected in Ontario, and since his election, Mike uses his platform to amplify his community's concerns. So, Mike, in your experience, what are some of the ways that you see art enriching people and or fostering wellness?
I just don't think we can have a healthy, thriving community without art. I think about in the pandemic, one of the best things that happened to our community is downtown Kitchener. The downtown BIA worked with the art gallery to put up a public art installation across the downtown, so that even while we were social distancing and needing to be outside, you can still be inspired by some public art. And so whether it's, when I think about what certain movies have done to instill a passion in me to address the climate crisis, whether it might be a book that has pushed me to understand another person's experience better, a concert and a piece of music that has lit me up, or even through my partner's kids' eyes as I see them taking in a piece of music. We went to the symphony a few months back, and how that has changed them. In my view, it's how we light people up to care about the world around them is through art. And that's what a great story can do. It's what a great public art piece can do. And great communities who understand the value of art invest in it.
You reminded me, actually, when the pandemic started, we have a little bit of art at home and none of it's fancy, but I did a little Instagram art tour. I just put these little pictures up and said, here's why we like this picture and why it was special to us, because we were all stuck. And I didn't think anyone would care, but a lot of people were interested. And they're like, where's your picture today? And I'm like, oh, okay, I better get it up. So I think you're right. And what about the community? So, I do see it as helping us as individuals. Are you aware of benefits to a community when they do invest in art?
Yeah, I think first of all, for a community, it's important to have representation in our art that reflects the communities we live in. I think it's important we have art where different members of our community can see themselves reflected. And so right downtown Kitchener, we have an incredible piece by Luke Swinson, a young Indigenous artist in our community. It's this great big heron right across from City Hall. And I would say for our community, that says a lot about how we are working towards truth and reconciliation and whose presence is being centered in this community. We're in the midst of Black History Month, and some of the Black artists that have a presence downtown and make sure that the Black community sees itself represented as well. I'm really proud of the city of Kitchener and how they've commissioned more public art in their buildings across the city. And so, yeah, I think it says a lot about a community where art is situated and how it's reflected. And at the most basic level, it's also just, if you think about people who want to stay in our community, they likely might talk about Oktoberfest or Blues Fest, or they'll talk about a community event. And I can almost guarantee you music or books or some artistic expression was likely part of that in some way. It's also not only about the community that, lights up people who live here today, but it's about building a community and a community spirit that others are attracted to and want to be a part of. And that's really exciting to me also.
And like everything else, money comes into play, but I don't think a lot of people understand, I certainly don't, how does funding affect art in the communities?
Well, a whole lot of levels. First of all, this funding to individual artists, whether artists can get by in our community, but it's also funding for larger institutions. So downtown Kitchener has the museum, which used to be the Children's Museum years ago, but is an incredible space right downtown. We've got the Conrad Center for Performing Arts, the Registry, Center in the Square, KW Art Gallery. Those institutions rely on public dollars to operate every year. And so it kind of runs the gamut from those larger venues and institutions to individual artists. And this is something that, as a federal MP, I've taken a particular interest in, recognizing that the federal government is a significant funder of the arts. And it turns out that certain communities are getting a lot more public funding than others. And that's going to have a big effect on how artists are set up to have success or not in a community like ours.
So tell us a little bit about it. I understand that you have an initiative to try and help with arts funding in smaller communities. So what is the initiative and what problem is it trying to address?
We just listened to artists in our community who were telling myself and others for a lot of years that the funding model is out of whack. So we did some of the research and we looked at how much funding communities get per person. We found that disparities are significant. So you look at the average of places like Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Montreal. Those communities get just over $18 per person from the Canada Council for the Arts, which is the federal government's most significant funder of the arts. You look at Waterloo Region, we're getting just over $3 per person from the Canada Council. If we were to get even just kind of the average, we would have an extra $9 million every year to fund the arts, both those larger institutions and the individual artists that could then bring their art to bear in our community, and the festivals and all the rest. And so it ends up, a pretty significant inequity. But maybe more surprising to me is that we weren't the only ones. And so when my team did that research, we then looked at many other communities across the country, because we knew if we were going to be successful, it's not going to be because the federal government says Kitchener is uniquely disadvantaged or the Waterloo region is in a tough spot, but that, wow, the Canada Council has work to do in a number of different communities across the country. We were then in a position to engage with other MPs who also represent communities, where I would approach that person and say, hey, did you know? Here's how your community was funded as compared to those that are doing a whole lot better, and maybe we could work together to try to address this.
I'm just thinking if I can somehow figure out if being a podcaster is an art, but maybe not. But more seriously, what's interesting about what you're saying, though, is like you're talking about these big cities getting $18 per person. So, if, when you think about how many people live there, it must be a huge disparity between the money that's going to a big city and the small cities.
It is. And that's why we talk about it on a per capita basis is, we recognize some areas are larger than others. And so you might get more dollars total. That was the surprising part to me, John, when we did the research, is that there was such an inequity on a per capita basis. And what we've put forward is that if you look at economic development funding from the federal government, for example, they have a model already to better distribute funds. It's called the Regional Development Agency model. And so there's 5 of them across the country, and the 5 make sure that the 5 main areas of the country, our areas as Southwestern Ontario, all receive about, a reasonable, equitable share. That doesn't exist when it comes to arts funding. And so that's what we brought to the Canada Council. I brought to the minister. I put it forward into a motion. And what I've appreciated is a real receptiveness from all parties. The CEO of the Canada Council has been wonderful to work with on this in recent months. She and her team actually came to Kitchener this past summer to hear from artists, to hear about, there's of course legislation I'm proposing to address the issue. But in the meantime, the Canada Council can look at its own processes to look at what maybe needs to be done more or different. And our community can reflect on the same. And so I've been encouraged that, at least there's a recognition from other parties that there is an issue here to solve. And there's probably a variety of levels of ambition to solve it. I've been calling for a pretty ambitious and urgent action on it. But at least we're not having to convince others that there's a problem to address at all. There's at least a realization that there is a significant geographic inequity, and it has a big impact on our community and on many others too.
One of the things I'm thinking, though, is that there could be different ways to address it. And depending on how you do it, you could get resistance from different people. So, for example, if there's a pot of money now and you're saying the pot stays the same, but let's redistribute, then all the big cities are like, no, don't give them any of our money. So is it increasing the pot or is it redistributing a limited pot?
Great point, John. So what we're saying is we should actually restore funding. One of the related issues, so the Canada Council for the Arts used to have $500 million a year in 2021, and that's been reduced down to $360 million. And your point is bang on. To come at this and say, hey, Montreal, we want some of your funding to flow to us instead, that's a much tougher conversation. Instead, what we've put forward is they need to do 2 things at the same time. The first is they need to restore the funding. So we're not saying add new, but return the Canada Council back to the $500 million that it was at in 2021. Granted, 2021 was a high water mark for the Canada Council. So we're saying go back to that high level mark that you were recently at. Now, when they do so, don't do it the same way you always have and send most of that money to other communities. Do the inverse. Keep those that are already at $18 a person at that same level and use the $140 to lift up communities like ours that have been looked over to the extent that they have in recent years. And that 2-pronged solution of restoring funds and taking that restoration of $140 million and putting that towards communities like ours, that's where we were able to build up some cross-party support. I can appreciate in the Green Party, there are only 2 MPs. And so I'm not going to have those same dynamics. But we had MPs from the New Democratic Party, from the Bloc Québécois, from the Conservatives, who all joined us in this push. And part of the reason why they were able to is that we weren't saying we're going to take money away from someone else. We're going to just restore back and bring those dollars to communities like ours.
That sounds like it could work. Now, I'm just going to get up on a soapbox for a second. Going to make a confession, which is I do like fiscal responsibility. I do like supporting the community in many ways, but with an eye to sustainability financially and not getting deficits too high and all that. And in that context, in my younger life, I used to think, why are we funding arts? This is stupid. Like, let's do the important things. And just to say that ever since I started thinking more about and working more on wellness, to me, I've almost gone to the opposite side of the coin. Instead of art last, it should almost be art first. I do hope that more people start to see the benefits, the critical, important benefits of art and how it enriches our lives and communities. And we just start deciding this is a priority for our funds, not the thing you do if you've done everything else.
Well, and the good news is that both are true. I don't have the stats on hand with me right now, but not only is it true that a community is more connected, a better chance of thriving with art, but even on the sheer economic numbers, in terms of the economic drivers for a community, whether it's the tourism drivers, whether it is people spending money when they show up to an art festival, the economic drivers, the percentage of GDP that are related to arts and culture are significant. I'll leave it there because I don't have the number off the top of my head. But the point being that even for those who might identify as, fiscally conservative, those folks will be glad to know that investments in the arts are a really strong economic investment. That being said, I think it's also important if we're going to talk about raising funding for the arts or restoring funding for the arts, that we should also talk about where we need to be reallocating funds. And that's why we need to, as an elected person, I talk a lot about where we need to be looking at reallocating funds. We don't need to get into the whole long of it here, but I do think we need to be mindful that we can't only talk about where we're going to spend more. We need to also be talking about where the money's going to come from.
Okay. Now, from the last time, there's a question we ask every guest at the end, and I'm about to turn to that. But just before I do, just like last time, how can people help? What is this initiative actually called?
So it's codified as Motion 129. So they can look up my name and Motion 129. You can read it for yourself on the House of Commons website. And on any motion, any other MP can joint second the motion, which means to say, I publicly support and like what this other MP is doing. So anyone listening, you can look up who your MP is. If it's not me, you could email your MP and tell them why the arts matters to you in your own words, and ask for them to joint second Motion 129. They could also join a joint letter we've written to the minister calling for restored funding for the Canada Council and for more equitable distribution. If they wanted to joint sign that letter, they can have their MP email my team and would be happy to chat with them about it. So I appreciate you asked that question, Johnny, because it's so nice to have something to do as a result of a piece of activism. And that's the case here. It's just look to have your MP joint second or sign our letter calling for support for Motion 129.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And as you know, on our podcast, we explore different areas of wellness, but we understand that even though there's a lot of areas that are important to each of us, we don't have enough time to keep them going at any given time. So we do our little mini wellness check-in. So how about today, Mike? Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Yeah, something I've been thinking about is getting back to cooking at home more often. Last time I was on your show, I shared for me, I think a lot about sleeping well, eating well, and getting lots of exercise. And there are points in my life, and it might be the case for some of your listeners as well, where things just feel a certain level of full, where I either skip on lunch because the daytime is busy, or we're trying to get kids to bed and all the rest, and dinner doesn't quite end up as healthy of a meal as it used to be years ago. And so trying to get back into just making more food at home and maybe some grocery planning so that when you have a chance for that hour to make a good meal, you've got the ingredients home. And that blend isn't always there in our family right now. So that's something I'm kind of working on, is because when we do it well, we've got food the whole week that we can count on that's healthy. And so Sunday nights, I find, are a perfect time to make a really good home-cooked meal, and one that we'd want to reheat all week long.
Yeah, we've had interviews about bulk food prep and that kind of thing. And it's just so important. And I lost a lot of weight at one point, and it was mostly food, not the running, that I fell in love with. But one quick point, I read a Runner's Magazine article, and I'd been working on healthy eating and all that stuff, but they had these 4 basic rules that I think are so great. And yours fits into one of them, which is: first, eat real food. Second, not too much. Third, mostly vegetables. And fourth, cook for yourself. And if you do those things, especially like the cooking for yourself, I'm lucky my wife does a lot of cooking. I just feel so lucky. When we sit down, it feels like we're at restaurant quality food, sitting in our own house and knowing everything's in it. So I wish you luck.
And what does that do for your well-being? Like what a boost that is. That feeling of, wow, we're eating better than at the restaurant and we're right here at home. That's the best, and it's worth working towards.
All right. Well, sometimes you can't find time. Sometimes you got to make time. So hopefully you can.
That's it. Thanks so much, John.
All right. Bye.
Appreciate you.
We love our listeners, and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together, and let your friends know about us. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Okay, so you know how one time I tried stand-up comedy?
No way.
I did.
You did stand-up comedy. Wow.
You weren't there because you were working. But,
No, I wasn't. I was too nervous.
oh, is that it?
Yeah.
I did in a certain way, but what I decided was I want to try it again. It did work out well.
Uh-huh.
And then I've been really busy. I do want to try it again. It has to be an open mic. And this time I'm going to do more bits.
Yes.
So I always keep track. If I have an idea, I write it down. And it's someday, if I ever have time, which I probably won't, I'll be able to do like a 6-minute set.
Yeah.
With all these different bits. And so one of them came to mind the other day, and I thought it'd be fun on Flipside, which is I was thinking about couples and fooling around and how young people, right? Like we're watching TV sometimes and like the door opens and they go inside and they just start all this
Throwing their
crazy
clothes
stuff,
up
or they
and,
might
like,
be in a car or these like places that are like not comfortable.
No.
And it's like when you're young, you've got this like passion and you may not know what you're doing. Like you may not know.
You just want it right now.
Fooling around on the beach is probably not that comfortable.
No.
And then meanwhile, when you're older, people kind of know all the right buttons to push and all this stuff like that, but maybe he doesn't have the same kind of passion where you're just going crazy. So I thought I'd do this little bit about how when you're young, it's good in one way. When you're old, it's good in another way. And I thought, you know what? That's kind of like relationships generally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like the fireworks we used to have with some of our fights.
Oh my goodness. And what were they about? Do you even remember?
Doesn't even matter. It's more like the purpose like, was to fight.
Can't believe you did this and blah, blah, blah. And
you
don't care about me and you're not even in a relationship here, you know?
Oh my God.
It's all about you.
And luckily for us, they weren't actually like, I hate you type arguments. It's just that both of us are fighters. We like to fight.
We like to argue. Well, you really like to argue. Well, you like to win more than...
Are you trying to start one?
Yeah.
But like when you're young, and I remember too, there's a Roman guy who once said, I think it might have been Terrence, but he said, the quarrels of lovers are a renewal of love. And that's kind of how it felt back then. It wasn't like we actually hated each other. It's just that we always quarreled. But then kind of the next day, it was like, okay, we're reinvigorated. But more so, I just think when you're young, you say things right away. You act in passion. You do things immediately. You're older and you're like, this is the better way. I've just got a lot of experience and wisdom now.
Yeah, I know that doesn't go well.
What doesn't go well?
To say what's on your mind immediately.
Right. I thought you meant like being wise doesn't go well.
No, but I am feeling like being young and passionate is more exciting than this old wiseness.
It's more exciting, but I think there can be more kind of rich satisfaction when you're older.
Yes.
But really at the end of the day, what it made me think was, don't you wish you had kind of that wisdom when you had young and the passion?
Yes.
So maybe you just take the edge off a bit, but you still have that wildness.
Yes.
And then, or else you have that kind of passion when you're older. You got to kind of combine the two.
Yes. That's what I was just thinking, that, you know, maybe it'd be nice to be a little bit more passionate and reactive and just go for it, that type of thing. But now think about it. Is it really worth that? You know, maybe you should wait.
I'm supposed to be here at a certain time.
Got to do this. Yeah. So you think about things more. So
I should say that thing that's on my mind every once in a while, just for a little spark and fun.
And you do. Even when you say, oh, I guess I shouldn't say what's on my mind, I'm like, what are you thinking?
Well, the worst thing too is another thing that happens when you get older is you know exactly where the buttons are. Like when you're young, you're not sure. You're like, you might come home and not even be trying to do something. And you're like, hey, X. And you're like, how dare you? And then I'd go away going, what the heck did I say? Like, why is she so triggered by that? Well, now I know why you're triggered by that. So I could easily push that button. Yes.
You know so much more. You know everything, actually.
So are you telling me I should do that sometimes?
No, absolutely not. And I even know what you're thinking when you don't say it.
Right.
You know? But
really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I do find that when we're arguing, I can say, if I say I feel like, instead of you do this and you do that, or like, I feel like you do this on purpose because you're an asshole, you know?
I know. I was like playing that game now. I feel. As long as we're not actually fighting, I like doing that. I'm like, I feel like you're being a total jerk, which is not the way you're supposed to do it.
No, not at all. But it's fun.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John.
Hey.
We had some nice quality time in Collingwood this weekend. It was nice to see Elise, and we actually got to do some podcasting stuff, but it's really hard for her to do sign-off with us because she goes to bed with Michael and around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, which is usually when we're doing sign-off.
Yeah, so that's why Elise isn't here for sign-off quite often. She got that baby, and it keeps her very busy. But we had a really nice week. Worked for a few days, and then we celebrated Jeremy's birthday, which was really nice. We got to go out with the boys and have some time with them. So I really enjoyed that. I think we should do that more often. And on Friday, I got to go out with some friends. We went to see Fawlty Towers, which is an English comedy. It was a birthday present, and the person that we took really loves English comedy, and it was a dinner theater. So it was quite interesting, a lot of slapstick kind of comedy throughout the whole dinner, and that was a lot of fun. So we just got to do some interesting events this week. And that's pretty much all that's new with me. What about you, John?
I'm going to talk about something a bit different. We knew that there was an ice storm coming.
Yes.
We read about it, and there was warnings, and we were a bit worried about it. And ice storms are really bad. For people who don't know, what happens is it's raining and it's right around the freezing mark. The water comes down wet, and then it sticks to trees and wires, freezes, gets heavier and heavier and heavier. But we were up in Collingwood at our place, and we woke up the day after it was supposed to happen. There was nothing.
Nothing.
But when we went to drive home, it was crazy. We were driving, and we could see trees had been almost just ripped apart. You know, branches down. Sometimes the trees are split. Now, you can take this whichever way you want. I'm going to suggest taking it in a positive way, but I couldn't help but look at that stuff and think about the fleetingness of everything. You had these trees that were there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then one instant,
they're gone.
They're gone. That's us too. It reminds me to every day, like, make the most of today and notice this stuff today. And even we had a whole bunch of road closures.
Like we had this weird drive home.
Yeah, thank goodness for navs now, because I was saying to Sheila, in the old days, we would have had maps, right? We would have been trying to read all these maps. But anyway, it was really kind of a shocking experience to see all those poor trees ripped apart.
It was.
All over the place. But it also, like I said, reminds me to make the most of every day.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.